Morning, everybody. Thanks for coming together for this meeting of the Human Resources, Governance, and Stakeholder Relations Committee. A few items on the agenda this morning. Can I first get a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
I move it. Steve?
Thank you, Steve.
I second it, Wendy.
Thank you, Wendy.
Not on the committee.
The next item is to declare, are there any conflicts of interest to be aware of? Hearing none. And then can I get a motion, please, to go into closed session?
Okay, I'll move it again.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Wendy.
We're back to revised agenda item 9, which is the consent agenda. So the minutes of the open session from the November 13 for consideration and if appropriate approval.
Okay, great. Thank
committee.
you. So we've got those in front of us. These are the minutes from November. And I would like to ask if someone can move the motion to approve those and someone second, please.
So moved.
I'll move them. Joe Cressy.
Great. We've got Joe moved and Wendy
Second.
seconded. Thank you. The next item, Ian, is around the corporate governance review update.
Yes, this was for information only. Just to let you know, basically, that we are working on it. We're reviewing it, the documents, policies, and procedures, and we'll be reporting back to the committee at the next meeting in terms of where we are and next steps and that kind of thing.
And Ian, the big pieces of work between now and then that you'll be looking at as it relates to that are what?
The committee mandates, the governance documents themselves, the other corporate documents, but also coordinating with government partners as necessary for some of the things that are within their area, and getting the internal sign-offs, as it were, for the revised documents. We're trying to bring them up to date and reflect the current mandates and current roles and responsibilities of the board and the committees themselves.
Seb, you might recall we months ago sent out to each of the chairs, including
Yes.
yourself and Kevin, et cetera, opportunities to improve. And that's what this is part of the continuous improvement and clarity.
Thank you. We'll look forward to that update. Okay, next on our agenda is a strategic corporate communications update. Cameron is going to provide that to us in your board book, gang. That's on page 8, it begins. So I'm going to turn it over to you, please, Cameron.
Thank you, Sev, and good morning, everyone. When the committee chair and I talked about this item a couple of weeks ago, Sev said, let's do a recap of what happened following the withdrawal of Sidewalk. Where did the story land and where are we today and what's next? And so that's the purpose of this brief informational presentation. If I know if you'd advance the slides, and if you look at the second slide, which what happened on May 6th, we were notified late in the afternoon, or I became aware, and we set in motion a process to develop a statement to accompany Sidewalk Labs announcement. The understanding we arrived at with Sidewalk is that they would go first, and that our statement would follow and would complement theirs, and that happened. We were out in sort of market by 10:20 the next morning with a statement. The coverage was, if you go advance the slide, please, the coverage was pretty robust. I would say we had about over 500 articles the first day, and we had 150 or so the next day. And the story I want to tell people here is that there was lots of coverage, but it was a kind of a 36-hour story. What you see on this slide, you'll see some bumps along the way. I asked for an analysis of what was all the coverage between the May 7th and to the end of the month. You'll see some blips along here, at the tail end of May. You see a little pyramid there. That was not related to Sidewalk, and so really the story dissipated within the first 36 to 48 hours, at least in main coverage. There were some trailing articles that were in like journals that had a publication cycle that was, they were weekly, so you'd pop up a week later, but it was a dramatic fall off. If you could advance the slide, this next slide just says, the major outlets with major circulation really filed quickly and then moved on. So from an impact perspective, again, I just reinforce it was really a dramatic fall off. It was a short-lived story, at least in terms of mainstream publications. If you go to the next slide, please. Where did the narrative land? The narrative landed where Sidewalk wanted it to land, which was that the unprecedented economic uncertainty drove this decision. It was in the first cycle of coverage, that narrative was pronounced. There was some trailing opinion pieces that went over the sort of entrails of it, speculated as to why the project collapsed. But again, for all intents and purposes, if you're measuring yourself against getting your messages to land, I would say it was a success. And if you advance the slide, please, you'll see on social, really Sidewalk drove the agenda. So they were first out by far the most in terms of tweets and mentions. They were just leagues ahead of anyone else. If you'd advance the slide again, please, you can see again their narrative landed. It wasn't even like Block Sidewalk and some other urbanist publications like Spacing. It completely eclipsed with their storyline and their message. If you go to the next slide, please. So where does that leave us now? Well, it's kind of created not a vacuum, but it's created a bit of white space for us as a corporation. Going forward, right now, just if you could go back, please. So signaling a bright future. What we're trying to do now is we're going to be educating to communicate to educate. So in terms of immediate tactics, just for the awareness of the directors, we're going to have a stakeholder advisor. We're going to wrap up our Quayside Stakeholder Advisory Committee on Monday, and we're going to get their feedback on lessons learned. And it's going to be a very open listening opportunity. We're going to listen to the insights of that committee and really hear what they thought could have been improved and where the project should go next. We're then going to be testing with some stakeholders. So these are the BIAs, the Toronto Board of Trades, the neighborhood associations. Again, what do you think we should be doing? We're going to start putting scaffolding around what are the ideas around Quayside, but by no means going out with a fully baked plan because we don't have one, and I don't think that would be serving the public interest. And finally, we're going to have a consultation in whatever form or consultations as these ideas germinate. But the message here is that we are going to go to the public before we issue any kind of RFP, take signals there. And I think that was one of the key takeaways or lessons learned. There are many others, but that's very important that we do that. And I think will serve us and everyone well. If you could please advance the slide. So I said we're going to communicate to educate. One of the problems we had with Quayside early is that people didn't understand, and that's on us. They didn't understand what the objectives of the corporation were. They didn't understand that there are employment expectations, employment lands, there are density considerations, there's mixed use, there are all kinds of things that are expected in the Eastern Bayfront at Quayside, and we have to reinforce those. But as we are in this delicate period, we do want to position the corporation around. We have been building resilient infrastructure that positions us well for a post-pandemic. We have plans such as the revitalization of the Jack Layton Ferry Terminal, which would allow for better social distancing so people can get to the island safely. We have plans for a continuous waterfront walk, which gives people space to walk, that you're not all bunched onto Queen's Quay, that there's going to be a continuous walkway. We have plans for post-pandemic economic recovery, both in terms of construction, but also creating next generation jobs that are sort of future-proofed. And of course, we've got the talent and the will. And so we've got, Steve has been great. He's been out on the 1st of June. He and Christina did a session with ULI. He's going to do another one with Meg on the 17th. So we're really, we're not micro-targeting, but we are speaking to urbanists and that kind of constituency right now to test out our ideas and to build support going forward for the idea of the waterfront revitalization.
Okay, Cameron. Well, I think think that gives us what we need for today, and then very good feedback we're hearing as well from the directors in terms of, as we pick up the thread and move to the next stages, we're not starting from where we were, right? We've learned a lot. There's a lot of the innovation thinking has been done, and there is a dialogue that we can reactivate and a process that sort of leapfrogs, right, from where we may have been 2 or 3 years ago. So all of that is contextual backdrop for obviously the conversations and the communications to come out of this project in its next iteration.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thanks everybody. That's great. And we're going to go to our next agenda item, which is the Human Resources update by Rose, please.
Okay, thank you, Seb. I'm going to assume that the report has been read. I'm happy to take any questions. I just want to highlight a couple of things. With the COVID-19, staff has been working, as you've heard from George, from home since March 16th. Productivity has been largely unaffected. Our senior team is continuously checking in with staff. We have a weekly email that goes out from George to all staff. I actually make it a purpose to touch point with almost everybody in our staff, at least 10 people per day, just to make sure that not just that work is getting done, but mental health for everyone is okay. We've reminded people that we've got our EAP program to help staff out. We're trying to do a lot more social things online with staff just to keep them engaged and connected with each other, besides all the great work that they're doing. Our PFS process, as you've heard, has gone really well. We've moved forward. With George's guidance, we've applied a very vigorous, more vigorous process than we have in other years. Pretty proud of the process, so I think adding the more vigor has made it even stronger. We had a wellness audit that some of you may already be advised of that would have been updated at the Farm Committee. M&P came in and did an audit on our wellness program. It supported the offerings that we give staff. We've got a really great program. We've had 4 recommendations come back to us from M&P. 3 were medium, 3 were low. Kaylee and myself have already started implementing the recommendations. We hope that everything goes well. Our turnover rate was only 10% in the last fiscal year compared to the years before, where they were either 11 to 12%. We had a great program last year where we brought in some summer students, high school students, paid program, helped us out and really did a great job cleaning up and the office for us with respect to the renovations. We also partnered with the University of Toronto, and we had an unpaid intern program where 5 students were placed with us, and they got some really great business experience and mentoring opportunities and reported back to their professors back at the school. Let me just see really quickly. Just want to go through some stuff. We had last summer, we also introduced a summer hours pilot project. We started it late. We started it in August, so we only had a month of it, but we had about 70% participation rate from staff, 83% satisfaction rate. And of course, more people would like to see it. But as we discussed with George and the senior team, given the situation with COVID and everyone working from home, we probably most likely will not be entertaining the summer hours program. We just want to continue on with what we're doing right now. Let's just see what else. Oh, service awards, another great opportunity to reward longevity and people sticking around. 5 of us have been here over 15 years. There are 28 staff members that have been here and received 10-year service awards and 61 staff that received 5-year awards. It just goes to show that people want to be here, they believe in the project and have the passion to do the work. And then the other nice thing about Waterfront, we have been deemed an employer that has had 0 fatalities or injuries in our workplace. This is only respected to the office, thank God. And at the last 10 years, we've received rebates totaling over $370,000. We just received the last one. Unfortunately, we had one small minor injury this year, but that's all been dealt with. So those are kind of the highlights. I'm happy to take any questions.
Rose, thank you for your excellent report. Very good. The one thing I was going to ask you is it working to have your current policy being that all recruitments are in-house? How do you think that's functioning for the organization?
For everyone below the executive team?
Agreed. That's what
it's great because, Wendy, I've always been really, for me, it's about the public purse and the money that goes back to taxpayers. So historically, before 2 years ago, HR was a one person show, myself. So we did all the recruiting with an external HR consultant helping out, and we'd reach out to temp and recruitment agencies only when required. Since bringing an HR coordinator on board, it's pretty much her whole function. I've delegated it over to her. I oversee it. It's great. The only time we reach out again is if our own in-house recruitment process fails us to get the right person, then we'll reach out and we do an RFP to make sure we have everything right with the right proponent. But otherwise, we've been very successful. We also partner up with the WTI, and we've been successful at gaining, we've had one hire from there internally in the office, but I know we've put them in touch with our external workforces out there and they've hired people.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Joe or Andrew, any comments from either of you?
None from me.
Okay.
Nope. None for me,
Great.
thanks.
Rose, I
Thank
was
you.
really delighted to see the wellness audit and the mental health supports. I love that you're reaching out to, that's wonderful that you're reaching out to employees every single day to check in. I think that was tremendous to see. So congratulations on that, as well as the service awards. Oh my heavens. That's
Yes,
some long tenure by some folks.
I have to say though, the only downside of this, and I'm sorry, you'll have to allow me this, in the last almost 19 years at Waterfront Toronto, this has been a tough year, not only with respect to COVID. We've lost 3 staff members that have passed away. A young man in our project controls team in January, a project manager 3 weeks ago, and then just yesterday, we lost Marisa Piatelli. So it's been a tough year.
Oh my gosh. I did not know that news.
So we've been trying to make sure we've supported staff through this past year. On top of just the heavy workload, we've had some emotional challenges for staff. So that's been a priority as well.
Oh my heavens. George, would you mind, I think many of the board members, maybe everyone was aware of that news, but many of us got the chance to know Marisa in her tenure. Could you please send a note out? And if there's a way
yeah, I will. I actually sent something for Steve to send out, but I'll talk to him and I'll send something out.
Yeah, if there's a way to send notes to her family or donations. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. The next item, Rose, stays over to you and tags George in as well. It's on staff salary adjustments for the year.
Yep, I'll start and then hand it over to George. So historically, for those that have seen this type of comparative from me before, I typically update it based on the 5 years prior. This year, with the current situation with the pandemic, when I reached out to our like agencies and some of our counterparts, it was really hard to get information, obviously. So the only reason the chart is here, you're probably saying, why is it there? It's just to show the comparison over the last 5 years and to show you that WT's mid-level salary merit adjustment has always been in line or below other agencies or stakeholders. What I did do is, and I mean, this is really irrelevant because of COVID, but I was able to get some information from the Conference Board of Canada, Mercer, Warren Chappell, and Corn Ferry. And at the beginning of 2020, and sorry, actually probably late quarter of 2019, the projections were that increases for non-union staff would be 2.5, 2.2, 2.7, 2.1. So they were all over the 2%. We know that the economy has changed, and with COVID, there are a lot of people out of work and what have you. So obviously these numbers were really early projections. And George, over to you for item 6B.
So as the report identifies, very busy year, lots of progress, both with regards to flood, the Portland's flood protection project. Obviously, the sidewalk negotiations took a lot of our time, and a lot of other activities though were underway. Lots in our arts and public realm programs, Aiken Park, the Biennial of Art, a very, very successful year. At the same time, we have seen that we have some economic challenges, and our government partners will be facing that. So we have proceeded to do a few things with regards to salary awards. We are coming in with probably our toughest measures with regards to salary constraint that the corporation has ever witnessed in the past. The first step that we took was to raise the bar in terms of just having more consistency and application of the criteria for evaluation. That has seen a dramatic shift in creating, quite frankly, a bell curve on our performance. A few years back, 40% of our staff received the highest awards at exceeds expectations. This year we'll be going from 40% down to 12.7%. It was 21.3 last year. We have done the same with regards to the next rating of achieved expectations plus, where 38% of our staff are going to receive that category as opposed to 54.1% the previous year. So this has been applied all the way through. I think there's more consistency in how we're evaluating our staff. The bar is for sure raised higher. But on top of that, given the situation, we have decided that I have decided as the CEO that we'll be applying salary wage freezes for our executive, senior management, and senior project management. So they will be frozen at their last year's levels, with two exceptions: new staff, obviously, who were not here last year, and anybody who was promoted. So there's a number of people that were promoted, and we will not pay them, obviously, at their old job level. What we have done, though, is we have a small amount. The board had approved 2.5% for the salary wage base increase. We are only going to use 0.79% of that, and that will be targeted to our lowest paid and most diverse group of staff, and is based on performance. So even there, it will not just be an increase for all staff, it will be based on performance. So I think this is, a very rigorous review. We are continuing to look at our staffing and resource levels as we look at our needs for the future, and I'll be reporting to the board on any adjustments that we need to address in the future. I think, Seb, that's all I was going to say.
Thank you, George. Gang, any questions for George, for Rose on this piece?
No questions.
None.
Okay. Okay, thanks so much. Ian, I'm turning to you for some, I believe this is now back to item 13, resolutions arising from the closed session.
Right. The only matter I'm aware of is the approval of the minutes, and the resolution is actually posted on the screen now. Oops.
Right.
It's in your book from page 36.
Thank you.
Sorry.
We can see that there. So we have a motion, and this is for the minutes from the closed session from November 13th, 2019. So I'm looking for someone to move this motion and then second it, please.
Happy to move it.
Thanks, Andrew. Wendy seconded. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much.
And then I need unless there's anything else arising from the meeting or any other comments that anyone would like, I'll give that a quick pause to see. Otherwise, what we're going to do is move a motion to terminate the meeting. Any questions, final comments?
Just to thank you all. Good sharing.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, guys. Well, I look forward, hopefully the next time we're together, which our agenda tells us is September, we get to be in person, at least more of us, if that's the way the reopening schedule makes sense at the time. In the meantime, our collective thanks to you, George, and the full team. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Rose. Thank you, Ina, for always making sure we have everything and for moving through the motions of a virtual world when not all of us, well, I'm a Luddite despite that. So thank you for helping to move through. Everybody stay safe and healthy and enjoy your summer to the way that you can. We'll see you soon.